Welcome to We Bring the Wine, where we help to make the vast world of wine easier to learn and understand.
We are your hosts, Daniel Kennedy and Melanie Itel. Let's dive in. Hello, hello.
Hello!
I may have been a couple of seconds off on that.
I couldn't hear the intro at all, so I'm like, how many swirls is it? And then we're on.
Oops. Oops.
Oh well.
Oh well. Oh well. We have wine. We have our lovely, amazing followers and listeners with us. So all that matters.
That is all that matters.
Welcome. Welcome back to the Shenanigans. Episode 40.
Oh, new
Mhm.
decade.
New decade. So we're in the 40s now. That's exciting. And today we're going to. So a while back we talked about American kind of wine laws and
Mhm.
labeling laws and stuff that must go onto an American wine label. We're going to kick it back old school. Going to go
Old school.
get our groove on here and go back to the EU labeling
Which
laws.
is the European Union. So
Union.
old world
Mhm.
labels.
All the old world stuff, and it's going to be the broad kind of newly within this millennium, the newly created umbrella terminology. A lot of these countries have, like all these countries have their own
Mhm.
just designations and distinctions that go back for probably at least 100 years, if not 200-300 with some of them. But this is going to be the umbrella that has been created to kind of streamline all of the old world countries, if you will.
Right. And it gives a better understanding for anybody who's thinking like, oh, well, if France has certain laws, then how do they sell their wine in Spain? And how does Spain sell their wine in Italy? They all have to have these like set standards of what the label has to have on it for the labeling laws. And then they can add their extra little nuances depending on which country they're in, but they can still sell interchangeably between the different countries of the EU.
Right. Because without that, if let's say France wanted to sell to Spain, they would have a label with their rules for their label on their label, but then they might have to create a new label for the Spanish sold wines, and then they might need a different label for the Italian sold wines. So it just streamlines everything and actually saves a lot of time and energy and money for a lot of these, especially a lot of the small vendors in some of these foreign countries in Europe. So figure we'll break it down, keep it pretty simple, not go into the weeds. Try
Not
to.
that it's going to be a short episode because for some reason we don't know how to do that.
No.
No.
So,
But
um,
before we start,
oh
should we
yeah.
do our shameless plug?
Oh yes, please. Plug away. Plug
Okay,
away.
so plug away. First of all, thank you for tuning in once again. If this is your first episode with us, we have 39 episodes that you have to catch up on. So go back and listen to those bad boys. But if you would like to reach out to us on any of our platforms, we are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Send us a DM and we will get back to you, or you can send us an email. Our email address is webringthewinepodcast@gmail.com, and that is so you can ask us questions. You can ask some clarifications if we didn't really go deep enough. If you have some recommendations for future episodes, we would love to see that because let's just be honest, the wine world is very vast. And we're probably not going to be able to do an episode on everything. So if you have something specific that you want us to talk about, send us a message in our email. Or since the world of wine is so incredibly vast, we may have gotten something wrong. Shocker.
No.
I know. No.
Saving so.
send us an email, send us a message, let us know, like, hey, you got this wrong, and we will correct it in a future episode. The other thing is we are on Instagram, so you can follow us at We Bring the Wine, and Daniel and I are also part of the Instagram world, so you can send us a message and follow us. I am at I Bring the Wine. Daniel is at wine_appetit. And you can follow us and just make social media social again. Whew. All right. Done with the shameless plugs. I need a
Nice.
drink after
Look
that.
at you go. And you need a drink after that. So now that we've done the shameless plugging away, since you just took a sip, what are you drinking? So we're talking about EU labeling laws. We don't.
Yes.
It's kind of free range for us when we do our topic ones. We don't have to like, it's like, oh, we don't have to make sure we have this kind of wine, or we don't have to make sure we have this from this area kind of wine. So this is free range, and I do remember what you had.
Yes. So this is actually take two because we tried to record a couple of days ago and it just was not happening. So I am going back to this. It is the Marqués del Atrio, which is a James Suckling produced wine from Spain. So I figured it would be a good thing to have a European label so that if there's any questions on what is supposed to be on the label and things like that, I could always refer back to it.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I'm thinking of it, this is an EU label that is being utilized in the United States. So they may have a completely separate one for the United States. Like I just had that epiphany like as we are talking. So who knows? But it is a Tempranillo Graciano Reserva from the Rioja region. So on the back, it has that cool little Rioja label since it is a Reserva. And it is a beautiful fruit forward red wine that you can definitely tell has had some oak aging because of the laws in Spain. And even after a couple of days of being open, it is still vibrant and fruity and tannic and acidic, like everything. James Sucklings gets a lot of flack for rating wines, and they're like 88 to 94 for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
But Daniel and I were talking about that not too long ago, and it's like, well, on a scale of like 0 to 100, you would probably think that he's only going to advertise the ratings that are 87, 88 up to 100. So of course it sounds like everything that he's advertising are all of the good scores because he wants people to buy wine that it has a good score. So
you don't run home and tell your parents that you got an F on a paper.
Right. Yes. Thank you. Like, hey, look what I did. I got an F. So yeah, like he was part of this winemaking process. His name is slapped on it. He only gave himself a 91. So I feel like he's at least being real. And whether you love him or hate him,
mm-hmm.
he made a good wine. He was part of the production group that created this. And James Suckling, if you listen to this podcast, like a couple thumbs up on this one, buddy, because it actually is really good for a Tuesday evening drinking wine.
Mm-hmm. And if anybody had a question talking when Mel mentioned the Rioja and the Reserva and the thing, we do have an episode previously, shameless plug again, about Rioja, Spain.
Yes.
So they do have very specific, only to Rioja kind of aging requirements. So highly recommend go back and listen to that if you were curious about what we were talking about there.
And did we do one on the rating system already?
Not
or is
yet.
That's a
coming
future. Okay, that's a future episode. There you
go. Yes.
Shameless plug for future episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. All right, now that Daniel has been sipping on his wine, you can see he has a white wine. What are you drinking tonight?
I obviously am not drinking an EU wine because I do the local thing. Let me see if I can get this focused. There we go. Back to Balboa.
Adrian. I had to. For those of you who don't know that, it's part of the Rocky movies, Rocky Balboa. There you go.
Exactly. Exactly. So
That's a cool label,
this
though.
I know. So it's actually like kind of I was talking to the tasting room manager and they were talking about how it's kind of a diagram or like a depiction of the Rocks District, which they
Oh,
do have
cool.
some wines from the Rocks District. This one, Balboa, is becoming a very dear favorite winery of mine. As I am drinking the 2023 Sauvignon Blanc, which they actually make in a New Zealand style, which just means that it's very high acid, done in stainless. It's got the lemongrass, the grassy notes. It's got the
Gooseberries.
gooseberry notes. Yep, it's got the cat's pee kind of notes.
Cats pee on a
Or
gooseberry
PP du
bush.
chat. So it's got all those that I
Uh,
look for in a
yeah.
Sauvignon Blanc. These tend to be more up my alley, like the Marlborough New Zealand styles. So that's mine. It's been kind of a warm week, but nothing crazy. But it's about 85 right now. But I figured, you know, I had it. You'll notice that it is empty. I did not drink the whole bottle.
We
I
have not been
promise.
talking that long
Not that long,
pre-recording.
no.
No.
It was opened
We
yesterday,
I was gonna
and
say
I
we
am
just opened the
finished.
bottles early.
Yeah, and I'm finishing it today. So that's mine. I went Sauvignon Blanc. It's probably one of my favorite white varietals anyway. So I went with an old favorite for with in being made by a coming around new favorite. So that's where I
Cool.
went. Balboa Winery. Do they have a website on here? They do not. But they do say that they only made 168 cases.
Wow. That's
So,
very small production.
so
Cool.
Balboa is here in the Walla Walla Valley. If you had any interest in looking them up, they have some really incredible wines. I send a lot of people to them. A lot of people to them, and they've noticed because they almost yelled at me for it. they're like, that's you doing that? And I was like, mm-hmm. They're
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, thanks.
Oh,
They like
thank
me.
you.
They're like,
Yeah.
oh, thank you. So
And
yeah.
that's so just as a side note, hopefully it won't be a rabbit hole. Um, that one of the things that I like about hearing you talk about the wine industry and the tasting rooms and the different things out in Washington is it seems like everybody is rooting for everybody to win. Like it that is really awesome. The winery that I get to partner with and work with here in New Hampshire, Apollo Vineyards, they are doing the same thing. Like they want New Hampshire wines to become something more than what they are because like the number of people who come up and see us from Boston, they're like, we didn't know New Hampshire had wineries. And it's like, oh yeah, we have a lot of wineries around here. So like when they're done with our tasting room, we will be like, oh, where are you going next? And they're like, oh, we really don't know. It's like, oh, okay, well, you've got Sweet Baby Vineyards, you have Zorvino's, you have LaBelle, like you can go to the, and they're
Mhm.
like, oh, how far is that? And it's like, oh, 15 minutes. And they're like, oh my gosh, it's only 15. Yeah, we have quite a few wineries that are really close together so that you can do it all in one day if you have a designated driver.
You have a really nice Uber driver, yeah. No, that's the
Hmm.
that's the nice part about like kind of sort of where you're at is you have this nice clustering
Hmm.
of really nice wineries, like
Yep.
showcasing what New Hampshire specifically, but New England and then the Northeast can do with different grapes than what people are accustomed to seeing. So, no,
Yep.
I like that.
Yep.
It's that camaraderie is everything.
Hmm.
Um,
You can't build a wine industry if everybody's fighting with each other.
yeah,
And I don't feel like they do that, which is really awesome. So,
nice,
all right,
nice.
I digress. That
Mhm.
wasn't very far down the rabbit hole,
Isn't
but
very far.
yeah.
Not bad, not bad. So let's see here. So some of the notes that I have, the formation of the EU, the European Union, for that. especially specifically to wine. And we're not going to go down the EU in general.
Hmm.
But the formation of that wine system
Hmm.
was made from a hodgepodge of all different national wine systems. You have Italy, you have Greece, you have France, Germany, Bulgaria, not Tasmania, Romania. You have all these, Switzerland. All these
Spain.
different, yeah, all these different places that over the however long have created their own laws.
Hmm.
So the EU coming into fruition for them just simplified it for everybody, and it made it okay. Well, these are the standards where you can put on your label, and you don't have to make any changes. If the French wine, if you guys want to sell it to Georgia, if you want to sell it to Greece, if you want to sell it to Italy, you don't have to change anything. Just make sure X, Y, and Z are on the labels. um, it is an umbrella, so it's an umbrella framework
Hmm.
that, what did they say? They defined various terms and set certain standards. So some people may have had to raise the bar a little bit. Some people may have already been above the bar and either had
Hmm.
just dropped a little bit or they maintained, which I'm sure is actually more what happened. But um,
Yeah, I don't think they don't have to decrease the amount of information that's on the label. They just have to have
specific
the
pieces.
specific
Yeah.
things on the label in order for it to be qualified as an EU label so that they can sell internationally.
Right. And then they can add their own spin on it. So if you have something like, let's say, a German wine, they have to have those EU kind of things on there, that framework set up, like the skeleton and the bones of it, the nuts and bolts of it. But they can also still use their country's information. So they can still say Qualitouchwein on there. They
Yeah,
can still
the
say
Predikat system.
Trockenbeerenauslese on that label. They don't have to remove that, but they do maybe have to put all the alcohol content. Maybe that was one of the
Hmm.
standards. Maybe the sulfite content. I'm not 100% like up on what needs to be there, but
Ah,
they can still.
that's what I found.
Oh yay!
Yes. Like once again, I feel like you and I have done a like perfect job. Like you have like the historical piece of it this time,
Yeah.
and I have the what actually needs to happen. And it just like we just
Nice.
it works out perfectly.
Nice. So yeah, so this allows each country to mold its own system, take its own system and mold it into that framework, but then still remain unique to their to and culturally significant to their ancestry and what they want on
Right.
there. So this all came about and started in August 1st, 2009. That's when this framework went into place. So it's really not that old. It's
Hmm.
a new way to do it. And you would have thought that people that were doing it for 200 years might get a little angry about it. And there's probably a little bit of agitation, but at the end of the day, it made their lives easier.
Right. And when I start going through the things that are required on the label and the things that cannot be on the label, I feel like the stuff that cannot be on the label is probably the thing that agitated everyone because the thing that's like the giant list of things that has to be on the label, people are like, oh, I already do that. I already do that. I already do that. I already do that. What do
Right.
you mean I can't have this on the label? So yeah, I the 2009 that I didn't know the year that this all started. I do know that December 1st of 2023 they have revamped it and they've done some updates to it as far as like
Oh.
nutrition on the label.
Oh, I've been reading up a little bit on that. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting.
So all the like the things that are required on the label, the type or style of wine. Um, this is where it kind of gets a little fuzzy because in Europe, you don't necessarily have to have the grape variety on the label.
Right.
So if you live in France, you can just put on there that it is Burgundy from uh, Romani Conti. What does that mean to an American? Because we don't know what their specific regions have to have as far as like grape varieties and things like that. To somebody from France, they would be like, oh, it's a red wine. It's Pinot Noir.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to have the grape on there, but they do have to have like where it's from. They can put the grape variety on it, and that's where I think, like for my bottle here, right on the front it says Tempranillo and Graciano. So I feel like for the American labels, that's something that they're adding because Americans don't know what the regions have. Like Rioja is like world renowned for Tempranillo. If you are not a wine drinker, you might be like, I just like wine from Spain. Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I've heard of the Rioja region. I don't know what that grape variety is. That
Mm-hmm.
that's something that they're starting to add to that.
And I feel like that's happening more and more with as the younger generations are coming into drinking age. Is that there's
And taking over the
less?
wineries.
Yes, there's less knowing or knowledge about. Oh my gosh, no, I love a Romani Conti. Did we know what that was 10 years ago? No, but it used to be taught. And now I don't think there's as much of the education there. So it's for the American system, at least, I think that's a brilliant idea for them to
Agreed.
start putting what the grape is on there, because then they can actually boost their American sales.
Yeah, because like even something as simple as putting on like Pinot Noir and it's from Burgundy. I know people who have only had white wine, so only Chardonnay from Burgundy, and they see it on a menu and they're like, "Ooh, I want this because I recognize the Burgundy region." And they realize it comes out and it's like, "What? Why are you giving me a red wine? Burgundy isn't red; it's white." And it's like, "Oh, you've only tried the Chardonnays."
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I agree that I think it's really starting to develop and become more user friendly. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I'm starting to notice with like the generational like transfer over to the younger generation of these wineries is they're starting to see that if their winery, if their wines, if their business is going to actually stay in business, they need to reach younger generations that have no idea what's going on. They don't know. They just know that they like to drink wine,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't know anything about it. So like they're
Mm-hmm.
starting to see that takeover of, okay, yes, our wines are red Burgundy. What does that mean? And they're starting to develop that a little bit more, which
Yeah.
is really cool.
Yeah. I just had that conversation today, and a quick aside. I just had that conversation today with a customer, and we're talking about so many people, especially coming up into those younger years, the 20s and 30s, coming into wine, but even the 40s and 50s. I'm noticing, especially because I work with one of the wineries I work with. We don't do any filtering or fining if we can help it, and people just kind of look at you like,
The
I
nod
have
and
no idea what
smile.
you're
Oh
talking about.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's a
So
blank stare.
it's a blank stare. So I have stopped and I'm like, has anyone ever explained to you what that is? And 100% of the time lately, it's been no. So I'm enjoying that the EU is taking it and using it as a teaching moment.
Yep.
Rioja, and now they're seeing Rioja and Tempranillo Graciano, or they might see Tempranillo, they might see Tempranillo Grenache, or any of those
Mm-hmm.
mixtures. So now, when the new up and coming generations of wine drinkers, wine enjoyers, they hear Rioja, they know they like Rioja, and at least now they're starting to learn that, oh, I know that there's at least Tempranillo in this. I kind
Right.
of know what these grapes are, so I know what to
Yep.
expect. So I'm loving the fact that Marquez del Trio is doing that, and I'm hoping that more are going to be following suit with
Yeah,
that.
I feel like that is a trend that is starting and the ball is starting to roll, and pretty soon it's going to start going down that hill.
Here's hoping.
So here's hoping. All right,
Yeah.
next on the list, it has to have a region of origin. And Daniel and I talked about this a little bit in some of our regional podcasts. Again, shameless plug to go back and listen. Um, but so, like Tuscany, if it is from a specific region in Tuscany, they are supposed to put that on the label. If it is from multiple vineyards throughout the region of Tuscany, they can just put Tuscany on there.
Right.
On their label. If it
And that
is
you might see for EU labeling, you might see PGI, protected geographical indication. So that's the
Yeah.
EU blanket, came from multiple areas within Tuscany, so
Right.
you can only put Tuscany.
And if it comes from multiple areas within Italy, it will just say Italian red wine, Italian white wine.
Mhm.
So
And for the
that's
yeah. So for the EU, this blanket one, they just call it wine.
yeah, or vin.
But it has to be all from the same country, and you can put you need to put the country on there.
Right.
So, but those ones that are like, let's say it's Tuscany, but it came from this really tiny little place in Tuscany, and that's got its own separate kind of like mini designation. That's when you can put the highest quality tier of PDO, protected designation of origin. So it does have the tiering system. It's just a little different than like the US, or it might be, it's got different letters than like the French or the Italians. So
Exactly.
mhm.
Alcohol. The alcohol content has to be on the label, which is like, I feel like that's a standard across the world. Like,
Mhm.
I have yet to see a wine label that doesn't have the alcohol content on it. But I will say there are some labels where the alcohol content is very hard to find, because sometimes it will be like on the side of the label here in like embossed gold foil or something like that. The
First
alcohol
part of the
content,
logo.
right? The alcohol content on mine actually is in very bold print. It's 14%. Woo, got a big daddy here. But every single, oh yeah, yours is in bold print too,
Mine bold print.
13.4. Every label that I've ever seen has had the alcohol content on it, because that seems to be a standard just across the board.
Yeah, mandatory.
The name of the bottler, the producer, or the vendor has to be on, and I think they like made this like kind of a generic thing. So in the United States, you can say that it's bottled at a certain location or it's produced by, but you don't have to have all three. This one says bottled on the premises of, I don't read Spanish, so we'll just say that it is a Spanish name. In
Insert
Spain,
Spanish name here.
insert Spanish name here. In Mendavia, España. So like it has that produced bottled section here on the label, which is really cool. But it, as I'm thinking of it, most of my American wines have that as well.
Yeah,
Like
mine does too.
bottled
Produced
in.
and bottled.
But if it is a European wine that is distributed, say, by like co-brand or
Star.
yeah,
Yeah.
like any of those distributors, like the importers, their stamp is going to be on there as well. And most of the time it's like this, where it's an extra stamp in addition to the label that they already have on there, because then they don't have to reproduce multiple labels, which can cost a lot of money. So it just has to be on the bottle. It doesn't necessarily have to be on the same label.
Huh. I actually never thought about that being the reasoning.
Oh,
Interesting.
so I found something interesting that Daniel didn't know. Well,
very nice.
Mel's getting fancy. The net contents. How much wine is in your bottle? Again, I have yet to see a bottle of wine that doesn't have the fluid ounces. Usually it's 750 milliliters. Even the Americans have adopted the milliliters as opposed to cups or ounces or anything like that.
Standardized, yeah.
Fun fact, there are 25 ounces of wine in a bottle. Standard pour is 5 ounces. So if you are following the directions, each bottle of wine that you have should give you 5 glasses. If you're a Melanie or a Daniel, you might get 2.
Maybe.
Maybe.
So, fun fact, and it's not necessarily old world, but once you get into the not as much glamorous and pretty side of the wine industry, as far as the milliliters go,
Mm-hmm.
every single state and the way that so this is compliance work. So every single state, when you need to pay that state the taxes that you've collected from, let's say Mel buys wine from Balboa and has it shipped to New Hampshire. Well, she's obviously paying the New Hampshire taxes on it, whatever those
Mm-hmm.
might be, and Balboa is collecting those taxes. Well, Balboa has to pay the state of New Hampshire those taxes back. I know it's a little bit, it's kind of annoying that there's an extra step in there, but every single state is different. Every single state. So one state could say, oh, we need you to report how much wine you've sent to this state in liters. Some states,
not in bottles?
Some are bottles.
Okay.
Some are cases. Some are liters. Some are gallons. Some are milliliters.
Oh my
Some
gosh.
are ounces. Every single state is different. So
And
the fact
we
that
wonder why.
So the fact that the U.S. has just kind of obviously adopted the milliliter system is a beautiful thing. It's very, 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 very helpful. So I'm glad they do.
Yep. I like now knowing that information, I would 100% agree with you on that. For sparkling wines, they have to have the sugar level, not the sugar content. So this is where you see your Brut Nature, like your sect, your like all of these different words that a lot of people are like, I have no idea what that means. That is actually a sugar content that you have to have for sparkling wines. That was one of my fascinating moments where I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. I just thought they put it on there for like S's and G's. Like, I don't know.
Just so you know, like to let you know kind of what kind of wine you might be getting out of this. No, it's mandatory.
Yep, this is a demi-sec. What does that mean? In Europe, they know what that means. Don't necessarily know what that means in the United States, but that's okay.
We also have an episode on that in the past, by the way.
I think, what was it, was there a champagne episode?
It was our champagne episode, yeah.
So find the champagne episode and you'll find out what demi-sec and dough and Brut and Brut Nature all mean, all these fancy
By the time we get to episode 100, we're going to be like, oh, we did an episode on that. And then we'll have like 2 seconds of regular recording. Oh, and we did an episode on that. We promise we will try not to do that, but alcohol is involved in our podcast, so anything goes. Like,
and it's funny.
It is. We're hilarious.
We're funny.
I promise you, we have not been drinking ahead of this episode.
No.
This is just us naturally. So if you ever wonder what it would be like to hang out with Daniel and I, like, this is exactly what we are like in real life. Like, we are not putting on any kind of facade.
We just with food in between us.
Yes,
there's just food in between us.
There's usually food in between us and maybe a couple of extra bottles because we want to try a little bit of everything. It is what it is. All right.
What else do we need on the label?
So now with the new law that came in from December 1st, 2023, you have to have a list of allergen ingredients. So previously, this was contained sulfites.
Wow. Okay.
But you can put this as the QR code. So the other thing that is supposed to be on it is the nutrition labels. So it has to have the nutrition label on it and the ingredients that are in it so that you have like a like step-by-step, like everything that is in this bottle of wine, whether it's
literally
sulfites.
Literally the breakdown, like carbs, fat, sugars, and then like,
calories.
Blah, blah, blah. Wow.
Yep.
But it can be a
So
QR code?
it's a QR code because there's just not enough space
No.
on the label to be able to put that.
No.
So they can put it in a QR code, which is great.
Oh,
But
nice.
with
But.
the QR code, no, this is a good thing.
Oh.
It is illegal to have the electronic label contain sales and marketing gimmicks, and they cannot track your content.
Yes. All right, that
So
I like.
as far as like the you cannot do, those were the two that I was like, yeah. Actually, I think
They-
those were the only two.
So they cannot push market by you
Mhm.
scanning that code,
Yep,
and they cannot track who's scanned the code.
right. They cannot
All
track
right, I did
or
that.
collect user data.
That's good. We're also bombarded by all this crap, and
I know.
your devices are listening to you because I didn't even talk about Bosu Ball, and I got one for my birthday because I'm old and I got a Bosu Ball. Don't judge me, but I didn't buy it. It
No
was sent to
judgment.
me. Nothing went through my computer, but then magically my YouTube ads were talking about Bosu Ball, and I was like, that's creepy.
That's creepy.
So at least the wine industry is kind of preventing that from happening. So that's nice because everybody's so annoyed by all that stuff anyway.
Oh yeah. And by us saying they're preventing that, are people still going to do that? Yes. The
Oh, yeah.
difference is if they get caught, they can be prosecuted. Yep.
Big baddie bad.
So it's one of those things where it's like, yes, they are probably going to be listening. Thankfully, the majority of the things that I talk about when my phone is around is like really stupid things like memes and like funny stuff that happened during the day and wine.
Harry
So
Potter.
I just get more wine content and Harry Potter and Boston Terriers. And Daniel is always good enough to send me like the really funny like religious memes.
They're great.
Oh my gosh, they're hilarious.
They're great. They're great.
I love them. Keep sending them to me.
Always.
So the only other thing that I found that
Okay.
has to be on the label, and this is only for alcoholized. So when they remove the alcohol from the wine so that you have a non-alcoholic wine, there has to be a use by date.
Oh.
Because alcohol helps to keep the wine stable.
Interesting.
So if you are, let's say you are pregnant and you are looking to drink some wine that doesn't have the alcohol content, there are now wines that are out there that started out with alcohol. They removed the alcohol. Those now, at least if they're from the EU, those now have to have a use by date on them because one of the major components that keeps the wine stable has now been removed.
Oh, see, the only one I know about with that one is like the US where you can have non-alcoholic, and usually they're made in a method that doesn't create the alcohol. But if it does make alcohol and you remove it, you do have to put like alcohol removed because there could be traces, especially if you're someone, let's, God forbid, let's say you're in
remission.
Not remission. I didn't want that. That's what came to mind, but not remission. If you're in sobriety, if you've newly had sobriety, that could potentially throw you off track. And if you have quit and reached sobriety, congratulations. That is not an easy feat.
Good for you.
All.
Keep going.
Keep going. Keep kicking ass because you're awesome. So that's that. So the PDO, the PGI, and then the wine. So it's the hierarchy. So if you think of I almost just think of the food pyramid. The pyramid.
That's what I was going to say.
The top echelon is that PDO. So PDO is protected designation of origin. That's the highest quality tier. That's going to be stuff like your DOCG from Italy, your AOC from France. What was the one in what's the Spanish one?
DO.
Is it DO?
DOCA.
Oh, DOCA. So that I think DO was South Africa.
No,
That
South Africa is wine of origin.
oh,
WO.
WO.
Yep.
So those 100% of the grapes have to be like grown. They have to be within that small, clearly defined region.
Hmm.
So France is easier for me because I always remember them. So let's say it's from Cadillac, which is within Bordeaux, which is within France. So because it's a clearly defined region,
Hmm.
that can, if you put Cadillac on there, or if they're all from that region, the grapes are all from the Cadillac area, you can be a PDO wine. Whether you're an AOC in France or not, you can still be classified as a PDO by
Right.
the union. Now, slightly down the hill is PGI, protected geographical indication, and that one, it's usually a larger region. So let's say
Hmm.
Bordeaux, let's say Tuscany. We'll use Italy for an example. So Tuscany would be the larger region. As long as 85% of the grapes come from that region, it's a
It can be
PGI,
called that. Right.
which they're called. Um, I think they're also called PGI, or
Yep.
yeah,
For Italy, yep. It's
for Italy.
protected geographical indication.
Yeah. Also, if you want the grape or the vintage on the label for this one, 85% of the grapes have to be from that vintage
Right.
and or of that grape. If you want both of those, they both have to be in that. Now, once you get down to wine, kind of that more base level, the bottom of the pyramid, not that it's bad quality, but it's just, it could be from the entire country. Let's say Italy.
Hmm.
You could source from Sicily and Piedmont and all these other places. You can still call it Italian wine. It'll be Italy, but that's about as far as you can get. But 85% of the vintage or the variety must be the same. So if you want to call it Nero d'Avola, it has to be 85% Nero d'Avola to put that on the label. If you want to
Neurodavila
say,
being a grape variety, not a region.
right.
Yeah.
But if it was a region, well, actually, in this instance for Nero d'Avola, Etna, like Mount Etna,
Hmm.
Etna, if you want to put Etna on there, still has to be 85%, but you can still source grapes from anywhere else in the country,
Right.
and you can still call it wine.
And
Or
if people ask like, well, why wouldn't you use 100% grapes from that region? It could be a lot of factors.
Mhm,
I feel like that is a whole other episode, but just like to throw a couple of ideas out there. So that region could have had a really bad frost or could have had like hail damage. So they
mhm,
can't technically put all of their grapes into one vintage or one variety or one bottling. Um, they could just want different grape varieties. So the one that I always think of is Northern Rhone, where the only red grape variety that is allowed is
oh,
Syrah, and they
mhm,
can add in three different white grape varieties. So you have Viognier, Marsanne, and Roussanne. People are like, why would you add a white wine to a red wine? Well, it's because the white wine adds some flavor components of fruitiness and floral notes, and it helps to like hold back on like the tannins. And
mhm,
Syrah has a really big black pepper
mhm,
taste to it. So if they got overly ripe, there might be some other things that are going on with it. So those are just some of the ideas of
right.
why you wouldn't necessarily have a 100% wine from a region. Flip that. If you see that the wine is 100%, let's say from Rioja, 100% Tempranillo from a specific region, from a specific vineyard, they could have had a really awesome year for growing. And the
Mhm,
winemaker is like, I'm going to make a ton of wine out of these grapes. It's going to be awesome. They're going to be age worthy. I'm going to sell the crap out of this. Awesome.
pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much is how it goes.
Yes. Whew, that was a lot of information in a short-ish amount of time. I feel like we're at like the 40-minute mark-ish.
Yeah, not
I,
that.
I feel like that's pretty consistent of where we
Mhm,
have been.
yeah. But it
Whew,
was a little kind of wonky. So again, if there's something that didn't make sense, or maybe we weren't able to kind of stick on that topic for long enough. If you want to know more about it, if you want us to just kind of explain more, if you want us to even do Instagram videos talking a little bit more in depth about it, shoot us an email. Like if you have a question on something, if we misspoke on something, if you're not sure or need further clarification, shoot us an email. Again, hit us up on the Instagram, whether it's personally or as our podcast page. We're both monitoring it, so somebody will get back to you. I promise.
It might just take a little bit longer if I accidentally see it on my watch and swipe it away, as opposed to leave it be so that it stays new.
And that's when I get them.
Sorry, Doug. I did that to Doug.
Poor Doug.
I was like, when did this email come through? And I remember I was like, oh, I was in the middle of like giving a patient a vaccine or something like that, and it came up on my watch. I'm like, oh, I'll answer that later. Completely forgot about it.
Yep, gone.
Yep. Day job took over. Next episode, let's see, we will be on episode 41. We are going back to a region. And we are going to the Kiwi state, Marlborough, New Zealand. Yay!
I went a little premature.
Yeah. Although I'm pretty sure you're okay with drinking Sauvignon Blanc 2 weeks in a row. Yeah.
I'm okay with it. I'm just going to have to go and get one at another place.
Yeah. I mean, share the wealth.
No.
Oh,
yeah,
no.
I know. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
Marlborough, New
All
Zealand.
Right.
Nice.
Yes. All right. Until then, we are done with this episode. So be well, drink well, be safe, and we'll see you next week. Cheers.
Yeah. Cheers.
Bing.
Bing.